This meeting is televised for those that are interested, and this is the April 9th, 2015 meeting of the East Hampton Zoning Board of Appeals. And we only have one agenda item tonight, and I understand from Janie that we only need 3 voting members to take action on this, so we do have 3 voting members, so we can take action on this. And is there anyone in the audience that is not here for the Parsons Limited Partnership application? Okay, then why don't we go right to that application, and we will do the other ZBA business at the end of the meeting.
Great.
So if you would like to.
Why don't I introduce? I'm Rudy Perkins. I'm a project manager and staff attorney at HAP Inc. We're one of the co-developers with Valley CDC of the Parsons project. And I think you know all the others. I'm the one who may not be familiar. Me, Wen from Valley CDC, and Jury Johnson from MBL Development. They're our development consultant, and Carlos Nieto. Yes.
Jared and I were not here for the Parsons Street application. So we don't want you to rehash everything, but we don't know. Okay.
Well, I'm in the same camp. I became project manager after we'd started construction. So Jury and me and Carlos know a lot more about the history of the comp permit. But it is a comp permit project under 40B. And under the regulations for 40B projects, if the developer wants to make project changes in the project detail that are in the nature of things that might have been touched on by the comp permit potentially, then and also your board added a condition 2 to the comp permit that sort of underscored that point, that we were to come back to the board pursuant to the provisions of the comp permit regs at 760 CMR 560511 and review those, give you notification of our proposed changes for you to make a determination if it would be a substantial or insubstantial change. If it's insubstantial, it gets folded into the permit once we've notified you as something that's within the bounds of the permit as granted. So we're here. We think that all of the changes we're proposing are insubstantial. We hope that's your determination, and I'll just review them quickly, and I think we'll leave it to Carlos primarily to go over the reasons why these changes were made and give you some more of the background. We did send you the board a letter on March 18th that went through 6 changes that we think are insubstantial. After that letter was issued, there were a couple of more things that came up that we want to also propose for changes. And Carlos put together a memo that came to your board on Monday, and I've actually, just so we have a good record that this is connected to that earlier request, I put together an addendum letter, if it's all right to submit tonight. So this is the original, and then here's a copy. And this adds the 2 points. It looks long just to cover the training. I've got 2 extra copies there for your colleagues from there.
We got that already.
On that, let me leave you a card here also.
We got that in the emails here too.
Yeah, that was emailed this afternoon, so you may have seen.
I've already read it, thank you.
Yeah. So, just in brief, and then I'll let Carlos get into more details. There were 6 original changes and details that we brought to your attention with the March 18th letter. That was the possible addition of photovoltaic panels to increase energy efficiency and sustainability. And as we noted in the letter, those were basically contemplated during the comp permit discussions initially. They weren't added expressly to the permit because we weren't sure if we were going to put those into the project. We've now been in much more active examination of that possibility, and we wanted to line it up on the comp permit end so that we could go forward with that if we can make it work out financially. Because of the PV panels, we looked at the trees that were going to be positioned in front of the south-facing roofs, and we realized that a few of them were going to become too tall and would shade the panels. So that in item 2 of the March 18th letter, we proposed some changes in where certain trees are located and changes to shorter maturing trees that mature with a shorter height. The number of trees and the size of trees that would be planted would stay the same, because there were some call-outs in the comp permit about the size of the trees that would be planted. That would stay the same, it's just the mature height would change, and the count of trees would stay the same. There's an express call-out of certain trees in certain locations in the comp permit, and those were, I don't think we touched any of those.
The only ones that we touched was, there was 3 evergreens on one of the, or 5 of them, right in the corner here. And what we did was, instead of, they're gonna be planted at the same height that was in the original permit, but they're different varieties right now, so that they're not gonna be over 17 feet, which is what we were, kind of the height that we were looking at, that anything over 17 feet would start to shape the photovoltaics.
Then the third item in the March 18th letter is an addition of a light by a dumpster just for nighttime safety. The fourth item, there's some wood fence panels that we wanted to add to screen the utility panels on the outside of the buildings in 3 locations. Carlos can give you more details in a second. We wanted to add 1 speed hump to the driveway. In some of our other developments, we've noticed a tendency to come in and out of them a little fast, and since we have a playground on the other side of the driveway from some of the buildings, we thought the addition of the speed hump would be a good safety feature. The 6th thing in that first letter is a change. We originally had what are called grass pavers in this location here. Carlos can go into more details, but generally those haven't been performing as satisfactorily as we'd like, and we think that they lead to kind of a dust bowl was there. So there's a proposed change to a different kind of paver there, and Carlos can give you the details. And then in the addendum, there were 2 other changes that we're proposing. The location of accessible curb ramp by Building C, and a shifting of where the parking spaces are, and that had to do with some grading issues that Carlos can explain a lot better than I could. And the addition of a light and a camera, security camera, at the bike shed, which is
Right across from the home. Yeah,
yeah, it's
right here.
and that's also our mailbox pavilion. So as we looked at it, we decided, with tenants potentially going there at night to get mail and with bikes there, that a light and a security camera would be a good addition. So again, we think these are all very modest changes that are in the nature of an insubstantial change. The comp permit regs give examples of what would be a substantial change. And that would be things like a change of more than 10% in the height of the building. We're not proposing any changes in height here. More than 10% of the number of housing units, no change in unit count. You see, these are the kinds of things that are pretty substantial changes that they give as examples in the regs of substantial changes. Reduction in the size of the site of more than 10% in excess of any decrease in the number of units, change in the building type or the building tenure, say from rental to ownership. So this is mentioned on the sort of the back page of text of our March 18th letter. Those are the kinds of things the regs give as examples of substantial changes, and in our view, these don't come anywhere near those and would qualify therefore as insubstantial changes. But maybe Carlos could give a little more discussion of why we're adding these, and if that would be helpful. And thank you.
So I think the addition of the photovoltaics is pretty self-explanatory. We're trying to make this as green as possible. So if we can, that's the type of additions that we wanted to do. So, but that put us in the dilemma of having to change some of the trees that we had. And what we've done is, and you have actually, if you wanted to, there's a couple of copies. It's easier for you guys to see it. But we've left the count of trees the same. What we've done is changed, we already had trees that were a smaller height within the original planting scheme. So what we've done is we've changed some of the trees that we had that were bigger shade trees into smaller, mostly flowering trees. And the areas you can see in gray on the roof lines are where the potential photovoltaics would be. So that's where we're looking at changing some of these trees to smaller varieties. For instance, in this corner, we didn't actually change the trees. We moved the larger tree further back, closer to the property line, to the setback, to the property line, so that it would be not, wouldn't be an issue with the photovoltaics. But I think ultimately what we wanted to say was that the tree count is going to stay the same. What we're looking at are trees. We're not looking at shrubs or any of the any smaller than a smaller tree. But things that would work with the photovoltaics and would stay underneath 18 to 20 feet, which is kind of the threshold we needed for the photovoltaic panels so that they wouldn't be shaded. I think some of the very important parts of the planting plan were the screens, and the screens have stayed the same. There haven't been major changes except for these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 evergreens that we had right in the corner. And what we've done there, the evergreens that we had chosen are going to be very high. They're going to be eventually going to be 30 feet high. So what we've done is we've accommodated a couple of lower size evergreens in there that are going to stay also at around 20 feet. And the idea also is the reality is that we want to maintain maintenance of this to the minimum. If we kept bigger trees, then they would have had to be pruned and as they went on, and those tend to not do very well as you start pruning a tree just to keep it at a certain height. So if we can have trees that grow to the optimal height that we want, then that's what we wanted to do.
I have a question about that buffer on the southern side of the property.
Yes.
What is the property, because I was not here during this whole project, that's an apartment complex right
Yes.
to the south of that.
Basically, right where you see the planting notes or where you see these notes, that's where
Right.
the other building is.
Is there outdoor space abutting that, or is it?
Outdoor space on the backs of the
Yeah.
abutters property. It's the back. Yeah, they have some area of grass in the back of those.
What will the height of the planted evergreens be there?
In this corner,
Yes.
we're looking at probably. I mean, they could go even up to 20 feet.
No, but the installation height, not.
Oh, they're going to be. I believe the permit requires us
Because
to
one
be.
of them is an Alberta spruce, I thought, and they don't grow very fast or very tall.
We've-
And I just want to make sure that the property owners to the south that were expecting a buffer get a buffer, not shrubs.
So what we've asked, I mean, it was asked of us, and that's what we submitted was 6 to 7 feet in height for all of our plantings.
Okay, and so those will also be that height?
Yes.
They just won't get, okay.
Yes, exactly.
They just won't grow any higher than 20 feet.
They're not going to grow any higher than 20 feet like some of the other evergreens that we have
Okay,
there.
all right.
Yeah.
So they still have their buffer?
Of course, and they would still have their buffer and still have all the an evergreen buffer too, so it's going to be year round.
Okay,
Um,
thank you.
So and I think, it's self-explanatory in the count of what the trees, but at the end we ended up with a net of the 315 plants, or in the total that we had for the whole site. And that's the part about the trees. I think then we would move to the addition of safety lighting in the dumpsters. And the two dumpsters that we're looking at is the one here, the one here. And it's within, I think in the first document that we sent you, it shows a photometric, or it shows basically what the light output of those are going to be. And why we wanted to show you that is that it's showing that no light is going to be going towards the back. It's all only to light the actual dumpster area. So in both cases, we're looking at the lights that won't, throw any light into the neighbors or even to the back at all. So you'll see all the numbers of zeros kind of on the back. That means that there's no light on that side, and then the light is going to be.
This is this?
Yes. And that the light is just the use of the light is to throw light towards the dumpsters and the recycling bins.
And not towards any.
not towards the back. So they're gonna be shielded on to one side, and there's, I mean, in there we also included a cut sheet of what the light is.
Where on the dumpster structure will the light be mounted?
So it will be on the post, and it will be this. If you see, even though this is just this is the wood fence detail that we are proposing for the utilities, but it's very similar, or it's the same type of detail that we're going to be using around the dumpster. So it will be when one of the posts, probably the middle post right inside of it. So, and then, and of course that it's self-explanatory that it's a safety light. We just want to make sure that people have light when they go out and at night and they want to throw their refuse out. The addition of fencing screen for we have several locations, and it's the areas that were more in your face for some of the utility connections. And I can show you give you a quick picture of what, this is why we are screening them, because there's these massive panels. So, and one of them is right in the entrance, so we really don't want to have an entrance where you're looking at, a big gang of panels. The other ones that we are proposing are both on the driveway, so on building C and on building B1. The idea is, again, as you drive in, you don't want to be looking at these ugly utility panels, and being able to have a nice wood fence screen for them. And the number 5 was the addition of a speed hump, and I think Rudy kind of explained that pretty well. That the idea was to slow down traffic, especially this is the playground area that's proposed for the project. So to slow down traffic in that, and it's the only kind of straightaway in the whole park. As you come in, it's a nice curve. You go in, it's parking. So in design, we feel like this is something that kind of self-controls itself in speed. But once you get into a straightaway, it's nice to have a speed bump so that you can kind of slow down people and make sure that people are not speeding in that area. But one thing that we wanted to make sure that the board understood was that speed hump has 18 inches on either side, providing the gutter flow or the flow of water, so that we're not interrupting any of the drainage in the site. So that making sure that the drainage works very well. The other thing is that it's a very wide and broad speed hump, so the idea is that it's not a big protuberance that you're going to be hitting a car and the car might be damaged. It's a very low and long speed hump, so that people will slow down, but it wouldn't interfere with plowing or damaging cars if they were driving through there. Number 6 will be the replacement of the reinforced grass pavers that we had here. And what that is, it's basically a grid of plastic that goes underneath, and then it gets seeded. It gets, first of all, loamed with a special, very sandy mix, and then it gets seeded over it. And originally, when we looked at this 2.5 years ago, when we were doing the specs, we've used it in several other projects. And what we've noticed is that as time goes by, and if there is a lack or if there is not enough maintenance on them, if you don't go and reseed these every year, you start getting basically a bare area. The idea of having that there and having a reinforced turf was because as part of the original permit, or when we were doing the hearings, there was a request from the fire department that there would be a good turnaround that was reinforced enough so that the emergency vehicles could go by. And the reinforced turf does allow to do that. But again, as we've looked at the track record of these reinforced turfs, we've stopped basically using them, because unless there's going to be a very intense maintenance on them, they end up being just dirt. So what we're proposing is just using segmental concrete pavers or concrete pavers that are going to be there. I know in your package there's a memo from our engineer in the office, Mark Darnold, and what that says is basically that the change from having the reinforced turf to the segmental pavers, there's no change in the calculations for drainage. The turf that was there was not taken into account as something that would be infiltrating. We were just taking into account as if it was going to be the water was going to be moving over it, and we have a catch basin basically on this corner that would grab that water. We haven't changed any of that, and it doesn't affect any of the calculations for drainage. So it doesn't affect the size of the drainage system or anything like that. So we wanted to make sure that you understood that, so that you understood that it's more of a aesthetic and functional change and nothing that has to do with drainage. Then the last two items, which were the ones that were in the addenda, was the changing the location of the accessible ramp, the curb ramp, and that is right here. And originally that ramp was here, which was closer to the accessible unit, which is the corner unit. But if we did that, because of grading issues, we have an entrance right where the ramp would have ended. So it would have required a step. So you would have come up from, and it would have required a step for that unit, not the accessible unit, but the first unit right next to it. And part of the goal of the project was to have universal accessibility in all units, not necessarily just the accessible ones. And at least so that if a person wanted to go from visit a neighbor, they could actually go to the first floor of the next door neighbors without having a step. So what we've done is we've moved it so that it would allow for grading, so that we wouldn't need to have any steps on any of the entrances here. And by moving it, it hasn't changed any of the, or it doesn't, it still fits within the ADA regulations. We're still close enough to the accessible unit for a person with disabilities to actually move from this area to go to this unit. So we didn't see that as a big concern. Ideally, I would have loved it if it was right in front of their unit, but the reality is that it makes it a better project by not having that step and be able to have every single one of the units to have universal access, so that they're on grade, so anybody could actually access the first floor or any of the other units. So that was the reasoning why we moved that ramp. And then the last item on the addenda was the addition of a light and camera at the bike storage unit, and I believe that's pretty much self-explanatory. We have a shed where we're going to have bike racks, and then we're going to have also some of the mail is going to be delivered there. And so we wanted to make sure that there was light, especially with people who are going to be either commuting with their bikes or coming in and getting their mail, so that there will be a light, and also there will be a safety camera, so that it prevents from people doing bad things into the bikes or any of that. And I think that's, for the most, that's all the minor changes that we're looking at the plan at this point.
And I think in my addenda letter, I may have said lights, and I believe it's actually just one light.
One light.
One light at
Yeah.
the pavilion. So that was actually, Carlos's memo was correct, but I said lights in my letter, so just a small change. So it's very low
Yeah.
impact.
And and just to be, and just logic says, and it's also right in the center of the project, so there's no real issue with light spillage on any of the property lines around. And if you have any questions, I'll be more than willing to answer.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions?
I don't have any. I've read everything that we received, and it's a great presentation. I think you covered everything.
And if I could make a request that in the whatever record of your decision, if you do find that both sets, the addendum and the original letter, are insubstantial, if you could make that clear in the minutes, so that we have a clear record that all the items were folded in. I appreciate it.
Okay, well, I think that if nobody has any questions, that we should make a motion. And I'll start by making,
Just for the record, can you go through each of the
Yeah,
items? And
I will.
Yeah.
okay. I make a motion that the 8 items submitted by Parsons Limited Partnership are not substantial. And I've read the comprehensive permit rules adopted by the Zoning Board of Appeals on June 17, 2002, and updated to 2/4/14. And the items that I do not believe are substantial are the addition of photovoltaic panels to increase energy efficiency and sustainability. That's basically a different color roof, which I don't consider is a sustainable change, is a substantial change to a building. The number 2 would be the tree types and locations to prevent shading of those voltaic panels, because the tree count and substantial size are staying the same. The trees that are slightly smaller, there are only a few, and they've been replaced with an attractive alternative. The addition, number 3, the addition of light by each dumpster for night safety. I think that is a good addition to the project for night safety, and I don't consider that substantial. Number 4, the addition of screening to screen utility panels. There will be 3 additional fence sections basically on the project, which I don't believe is substantial based on our rules. Number 5, the addition of the speed bump to increase pedestrian safety. That's a private driveway to be privately maintained. And so if they want to add a speed bump, I think that's an appropriate and insubstantial addition. Number 6, the substitution of paver types. I think the intent of that was for the fire department, and I think the pavers will be better for the fire department, and I do not consider that a substantial change. Number 7, the location of the accessible curb ramp provides better accessibility to the units and is not substantial, and the addition of another security light and camera is, in my opinion, not a substantial change. So there are 8 proposed changes in all. Is there a second to the motion?
I will second the motion.
Any other comments?
Just say, kind of support of what you're saying. If you look at the regulation, which is, I don't know if you have it in front of you, but it's provided in our technical memo. A change in the color or style of materials used is not a substantial change, is one of the examples given. I think for the
Voltaic.
voltaic, as you said, it's kind of like changing the color of your roof. So I think that falls within that. The other ones I think clearly are insubstantial. That was the only one I would say would be even close. But I think it's covered by the specific example given in the regulation.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask for a clarification? Was the addition of the accessible curb ramp, you didn't mention the accessible parking spaces, was that included in?
Yes.
It was. Okay, great, thank you.
There will be a letter sent to, I guess, who we wanted, wherever the correspondence originally came from.
Yeah,
It's either you or...
it's either me or Joanne Campbell,
Or
so you can...
go to both. So
Appreciate
that'll be, I'll work with the board to draft it next week, and we'll send it out sometime thereafter.
Great, thank you so much.
I really appreciate it.
Okay. And I actually did read this, our comprehensive permit
Can I
rules.
just
Jim.
ask you to, I just want to finish some minutes.
That was a good presentation, nice and short.
We like those.
Good.
Thank you.
Sometimes we're here for the late news, you know? Don't have to change it, running around.
Yeah, let's just fold it.
I had to go to pick up my grandkids in Hatfield.
I was going to ask you how the Cathedral Hoyle Catholic merger is going. Or shouldn't I?
No, the bishop's going to announce something this month.
Oh, really?
Yeah, definitely, probably here towards the end of the month. The 2 schools have joint meetings. Okay, there's a large board that takes, the name of the school, the logo for the school.
I'll finish. Okay, I have a question about our comprehensive rules,
Yes.
because I was reading the time
Good night,
frame.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And when we say we have to take action within, on something like this within 20 days, is that 20 calendar days?
I believe so.
And so I'm wondering, maybe we should change it to 30 or...
We can't. That comes from the state regulations.
Okay,
Because if it were up to
So-
us, we would
so-
just go by the normal.
so a suggestion that in the future, and I don't, could be 5 years from now, you and I probably won't be here, but if we have a modification and it might be substantial, we should plan on having a special meeting to deal with it.
Yeah, and also the applicant did knowingly submit that the meeting was going to be scheduled on this date. So they agreed to a longer period than
Okay.
what was.
Because it
by
says if we don't
statute.
act within 20 days, it gets approved. And in this
Right.
case, I don't
But then-
think we
but then
would
they
have
have to go-
minded, but
They
in
have to go
some,
through the constructive approval process, which is quite onerous, and they'd have to get a constructive grant.
okay, see, I'm not, all right. I'm still familiar with Connecticut law, not Massachusetts law.
It's
It's not an automatic.
it's not automatic. They would have to basically. It's a process to get the constructive grant. It's just not automatic.
Okay.
And I'm not familiar off the top of my head with the exact procedures, but it requires filings with the city clerk. It requires notices to all of the abutters.
But somebody who
Um,
didn't like our decision might be willing to do that. So just a point of information, if you see something, I think we would rather have a special meeting than have something approved by default.
yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's easier to
No,
call a
that's a good-
special meeting.
That's a good.
Than to say
pickup.
we,
I didn't look at the dates or anything.
Yeah,
yeah, they
I
got
pay
it
attention to legal deadlines.
because of the dates, yeah.
That's good.
You know,
Okay.
and maybe we'll also, you know, in the future, get them to sign a certification
Right.
that they're
Agreeing.
agreed to
Yeah,
waive
that would
that
be.
20-day deadline because the board only meets once a month, and that's.
Okay.
I think that would be another good option,
yeah.
just to cover.
Yes, to cover ourselves. Okay. Back to the agenda items, the approval of the minutes. And I have 2 comments for the minutes.
Yes.
I do not feel that Fran should be listed as absent. As an alternate, I think we shouldn't list them as absent if they're not here. That's personal opinion, and I don't know how Fran feels. Because these minutes will be around for quite some time in perpetuity. And,
Well, I think if an alternate is asked to attend, say, the April meeting, and they don't show up, it should be listed.
right,
But if they're not I mean, I didn't know of the meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, I probably did, but I don't think, at that time, I had come to see Barbara yet to take the oath,
Okay.
so.
Well, your appointment, by that point in time, your appointment had been approved.
had-
So
but
that-
I know it
as an
took me like 3
alternate.
weeks, it took me like 2 or 3 weeks to come over to see
But
Barbara.
they're not actually alternate members. The statute says that these people are associate members.
Yeah.
And as associate members, they are on the board, and they're supposed to come to the meetings, and the chair can authorize them to serve on these hearings as needed.
Oh, I see, okay.
So,
or maybe we do a footnote that, about the alternates. Or
Again, they're-
list,
they're
associate.
associates.
associates,
Well, you could
excuse me.
Specify the
I mean,
associate.
that is why the note is on the minutes that they are listed
Oh, yeah,
as
you're right.
associate members at the bottom, that there's a little.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. the footnote.
So
Okay,
that was sort of to, you know, they're not,
all right.
and then there's also a record going forward, if there is a hearing that's continued, we have the record of whether or not they were at that hearing at the first part or the
Okay.
second part, if they're asked to then vote.
Okay.
Um,
I just didn't want Fran to feel bad that he was listed
No,
as
I-
absent. We didn't expect him
It
to
took,
be
it
here.
took me like 3 weeks to come over to see Barbara. Well, we had the weather, and I was working with subcontractors with the weather, and I kept saying, "I'll go today, go tomorrow." Every time I say it, it snowed.
It was a lovely.
No, I
day.
think that's a good way to cover it, like you
Okay.
had listed, as
All
you
right.
showed it in March. I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, and the other comment I have, and this is Because I know when we approved the special permit for the home occupation, when I got to the criteria, I went through them really quickly because I didn't think any of them were relevant. But it looks like you wrote them all out.
Yes.
Is that appropriate when I purposely didn't? And I'm not criticizing, I just want to make sure that we're not putting something in the minutes that didn't actually happen at the minute meeting.
Okay, I mean, I can remove it. The reason, when you went through them, you went through them quickly, and in my writing of the minutes, I felt it was appropriate to clarify what those pieces were.
Expand on it a little.
But if you don't feel it's appropriate, I can,
Only because it's not appropriate or not. It's not accurate to me
okay,
because I didn't do all that. Looks like I did a lot more than I did.
okay.
That's all.
So I'll remove.
Like, just say that none of those criteria were met or
Yeah,
findings.
okay, and then
That's all.
in the future, though, we do need to be very specific about the findings as we're going through these decisions, because any permit that has criteria needs to have the findings that support the criteria. And so to say that there was no problem, we had a understanding, I guess, that at least when Maggie was doing the board, that's, how she did it with the going through.
I
each
know, and it
step,
just,
and
and to
it
me
is
it takes,
it is onerous.
but to me it's not relevant for a lot of that, and it just takes up time and paper
But
and
it is a criteria for approval, and they do.
I just think
I
they're more.
mean, I'll remove them from the minutes. But
Okay, and in the future I'll say them all,
Yeah,
but I didn't for that meeting, and so I just think it's not accurate. That's all. Okay, I think we have one piece of correspondence.
so do you want to move to
Oh.
approve the minutes as amended?
Yes,
Or,
I move that we approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Sorry. We have a referral from the planning board for a patio at the Fort Hill Brewery. If anyone's interested, and I have no comments.
Is this for next month's meeting, or?
For the planning board,
Oh,
yes.
for the plan, oh, we're just,
If anyone has any comments on the
FYI.
patio,
right.
I've never been there, I have celiac, so I can't drink beer.
I'll go over and see if the patio is working.
Seems like a nice location.
Yeah. That's off of East Street, right? Is that
Yes.
that's off of East
Yeah.
Street? Okay, I'll be right back.
Okay. All right. And Jamie sent out,
I got no problem with that, I think that's great. They should do whatever they can do to make their
no
business.
comment?
okay. The last item, and why don't we plan on spending 15 minutes on it, then we'll have an hour meeting. Home occupations.
Okay, I'm gonna, thank you.
And I have another question for Jamie. I understand which one Jessica commented on.
Yes,
I didn't I couldn't figure out, this was not the one we wrote, correct? So you took Jessica's comments and did this.
yes.
That's what I thought, but I wasn't
Yes,
clear.
I tried to incorporate her comments into a version that was a clean version that incorporated her comments.
Okay,
So that way, we didn't have to
keep going back
keep
and
going
forth.
back and forth, that it gave a clean copy for the board to sort of, yes, we can go forward, or no, or where to, so this did address her comments, at least as I thought. And,
The one thing I still don't like about the revised one is a major home occupation and any home occupation that's not a minor home occupation. I know Jessica didn't like the original that you had written, a major home occupation that potentially has an impact
Yeah.
on the surrounding neighborhoods. To me, that is what a definition is. And I just think that's more appropriate.
I mean,
And I don't understand where her comments, her comments that the definition should be kept simple and standards, but then it looks like she added standards in some of her comments to the definition. In that one, I really did not understand. Other than that, I don't know if anybody reviewed these. That's
I mean,
just a
so
comment.
I would be happy to, I mean, I guess I don't really know what to do in that regard. I try to assume if we want to go forward, then.
I do want to go
then-
forward, and I want that to hold it up at all.
But
Because
if
I
you
don't
have
want
like
the...
if you have an alternate definition or an alternate way to.
No, I think the
define
one
it.
you wrote originally was very good.
Which is the original one? This one here?
Yes,
Yeah.
And this is
This
what
is the
Jessica
changes.
made
And
changes to.
No,
the
that's the
original...
one, I responded to Jessica's, that's sort of the hybrid
Okay.
from what the board wrote and what Jessica commented, and then what I tried to
You
synthesize.
that's-
consolidate.
That's an appropriate definition. You're defining it different than mine. You're saying, and I think people can understand that. That just, to me, is an illogical definition.
I guess the problem that she had was when they were potential impact is too vague, and that where we can, it doesn't, I don't know.
It's defining it with like a clear-cut line. So if it doesn't fall into the definition of a minor home occupation, it still it obviously is a major home occupation.
Okay.
I mean, I understand. I understand with that as well. But I understand what she was trying to do in trying to eliminate the
Right.
ambiguity.
I just think for Joe Average Citizen, the first one helps them understand it better. I think they get frustrated with definitions like this.
So,
That's true as well. Right.
Okay, so
That's all.
what if I try to work the two to some,
Well,
To me, the home occupation section is the one section, or one of the few sections in the regulation books that Joe Average Citizen is going to be reading.
Well, you're reading major and minor on this, right?
Yes.
yeah.
And that's what you like.
No, I liked it on the first
You
one.
liked it on here?
Yes.
Where it's shorter,
No,
simpler?
it says major home occupation, a home occupation that potentially has an impact on the surrounding neighborhood. I think that's a phrase that Joe Average Citizen could understand, and that's why they need a permit.
okay, so I can,
That's
why
all.
why don't I add that line under a home occupation that potentially has an impact on the surrounding neighborhood
Why don't you-
and is not a minor home
Yeah, you
occupation?
combine
Okay,
the two.
that's
Because
fine.
That provides the clarity
Yeah.
and then the,
Yes.
the
And
explanation.
then as a way to do the minor, a home occupation that does not have an impact on the neighborhood and in that it is entirely operated by the residents, blah, blah, blah. So,
Okay.
so to sort of combine the two.
Yeah.
It can-
I think
it lets
that's
them
good.
read on to what the other would
I think
be.
that's a good compromise.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's good. And there's one other thing that maybe,
Okay, and then I have a couple things that I wanted to bring up too, that after I send out.
and I can't remember, something to do with non-resident employees.
Hmm.
I think there's a conflict in here. Someplace.
Well, it's for 1 year.
No, for,
One person.
Yeah, because we don't permit them in minor home occupations. You can't have a non-resident employee.
10.44, page 2.
Right.
10.43. A non-resident employee shall be employed to work at the subject
Yeah,
property.
it's,
Hours of operation.
1044A, no non-resident employee shall be employed. But then B says, hours of operation to the public, including non-resident employees. That phrase has to be taken out because we're not allowing non-resident employees.
Okay, yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, I guess, Yeah, that makes sense. So that's 1044B.
And then
We tell them when the non-resident employees can work.
Okay. I'm gonna pass out.
no non-resident employee shall be employed to work at
So
the
this is-
subject property.
Another change?
Just a couple changes that after I sent out the version that I marked up, to be a little bit more, there were some minor errors, in that, like, missing T's at the end of not. But if you look at 10.43, we had, one of the major comments and one of the original purposes of this was to get rid of all of the specifically allowed uses and specifically prohibited uses. And I had struggled with how to go through that list of prohibited uses and include them such that the standards.
They were standards, not uses.
Right, but to get those, to look at the themes of what the prohibited uses were and to incorporate those themes into the standards. And I thought that, for the most part, they had all been taken care of by the standards. The one that I had trouble with was the motor vehicle repair, painting facilities, trucking, warehousing. So I had put that into a standard. And thinking about it more, realized that by adding standard 10.43, you can see the underlined versions. Adding those two standards would make it a standard rather than like a prohibition on those specific types of uses, and might also catch other uses that are similar to but not.
Okay, and I like what you're doing, but I think we'll catch people with this that we didn't intend to catch, namely landscaping companies. I'm amazed at how many landscaping companies there are in East Hampton on residential lots, including my favorite one near me.
Well,
And
so
those,
which piece of it do you think would catch?
K, there shall be no overnight storage of any kind of vehicle on the property except for those used by residents of the property. And I know that there's a landscaping company on Park Street that looks like,
If you continue with it,
In conjunction with the home that does belong to members of the
do not belong to members of the public. And I'm saying I think some of these landscaping companies, the owner of the business has a dump and a pickup truck, and he has an employee who drives the dump, and the dump is kept in the owner's property, but they are not home occupations. It doesn't appear that East Hampton has ever regulated landscaping businesses. And so we're regulating someone with a home occupation with a much stricter standard than someone who doesn't even need a permit. Do you understand what I'm saying? To me, it seems hypocritical to allow landscaping, and maybe other kinds of business, but landscaping comes to mind, that often have quite a few trucks on their property. And their employee comes, picks up one of the trucks, leaves his truck there, and goes out and does something for the day. And that's fine. Clearly, East Hampton does not regulate that. But if you're doing it in conjunction with a home occupation, you can't do it. It's a stricter standard. Just because
my intent on this, on K, was that there should be no overnight storage of vehicles that belong to members of the public. So that way you couldn't leave your vehicle at like a repair shop, you know?
But I think,
And maybe I overcomplicated
Yeah.
the standard, but the intent was not to, if you own a landscaping company and you have the home occupation.
but most of the
and-
landscapers don't have home occupations, doesn't appear.
But they should if they're running it out of their house.
Well,
And if, you know,
Yeah, they're in violation of using residential property
Yeah.
as a business, as a home occupation.
I mean, they should have a home occupation permit, and if that would
if they had one, this would be perfect,
Yeah,
because then everybody would be on the same equal playing field.
right.
So
That's
the
just a
fact, the
comment.
fact that they don't have one.
Because my pet peeve.
Yeah, the
But,
fact,
so,
Yeah, right.
but going forward, if the
fact that-
landscaper came through, would that stop them? Would this provision as written stop them from getting the
Yeah,
permit?
yeah, because
How?
it appears that they,
I don't think so, because it goes on to say that
do not belong to
provided
the
that those
public.
vehicles are used in conjunction.
Overnight storage, okay, that's it, it's the overnight storage, okay, you're right.
Yeah, I think you covered that well.
Yeah, okay, all
So
right.
The fact that the landscaper doesn't have a home occupation, you know, if we had somebody monitoring or, you know, inspecting these, he could be
Okay,
in violation.
Okay.
Same with, like the woman that did the baking at home, remember the one that did the bread that has that small oven place?
Yeah, yeah.
She's doing quite well.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
She's doing really
and I'm
nice.
glad we gave her
Yeah, she-
original approval.
And the home occupation was what allowed her to
Yeah.
prove her business.
Yeah.
well, and then what about the L? Is that also,
The storage of
so that was to
business
try to
products
take care of the
produced off-site,
warehousing
placed
and
there
trucking?
directly and in conjunction is the raw material, spare parts, or components to be. I don't have a problem with,
I don't either, but I wish you'd
Okay,
tone
oh.
down the words raw materials, spare parts, or components. It's like you can run a machine shop as a home
Yeah.
occupation, just by those terminology. And I know the intent is to
spare
stop
parts.
a warehouse, but that to me gives the impression that we allow pretty intensive home occupations. I know that's not the intent. Storage of goods.
Maybe it's just the word spare parts. Because, go back to the lady that did the baking.
That's right, raw
She's
materials.
got raw material,
right.
she's got, you know, but she didn't have spare parts. She's not fixing somebody's, you know, lawnmower or anything like
Right.
that.
Right, but with a lawnmower, I mean, the person who was having that home occupation, the small engine repair, right, when you started,
Right, and
and would this ordinance stop that person from doing it? And is that something that we want, that the ordinance should stop?
I think the ordinance definitely should stop that.
Well, I mean, that's what the board ruled, so,
Right.
so as written, would this ordinance stop the small vehicle repair?
I don't
Or
know,
small
maybe,
engine repair?
what's the number of our
10.4.
I see what you're saying, I just, he still has to get a permit.
Right.
I don't think it'd stop him from going to get the
Um,
permit.
Maybe we have to expand somehow the major home occupation definition to include some of the wording from our old home trade occupation. So it's clear that all of those things,
But, I mean, so that should be, I would like to add them to the standards rather than to the definitions.
okay,
if
that's, yeah,
possible.
yeah.
And I would like not to, I would like the ordinance that the ZBA proposes to not list uses in the way that we, the best, you know, because,
I sort of disagree because again, we're talking, Joe Average Citizen is gonna look at this, and I think giving them examples of minor and major, I think makes it easier for the average citizen to understand whether they're gonna need a approval or not. They don't understand, we understand standards, but they don't. So I think keeping
well, I mean,
some,
they come in and they get the permit and the building inspector says, this looks like it's your.
but I think a lot of people wanna know before they have to come in and talk to someone, they wanna be able to read the regulations.
Most people don't read the regulations.
Well,
And they only
they
find
do
out
that.
when they've got to get their business
Yeah, I know.
certificate that they need a permit.
Okay, maybe I'm just overthinking, but I just like to have regulations that are aimed at Joe Average Citizen, that they can understand them, that's all,
Okay,
Yeah,
without making it too complicated.
right.
Okay,
Well,
I think
but-
the average citizen comes in and lets the people at the desk tell them that you don't need this or you don't.
okay.
Or we'll look at, well, what are you doing? What are
Oh,
you-
well, anything, this is better than what we have.
Okay.
So maybe we should go ahead and see,
I mean, because
propose
the
this.
next step is for the ZBA to submit their proposal to the city council,
Mhm.
and then the
it
city
doesn't go
council.
to the planning board?
No, because the way that an ordinance gets changed is, goes to city council. City council then accepts it and sends it to the ordinance subcommittee and the planning board, who then have a joint hearing on it. And will discuss it at a joint hearing until such point that they've reached a conclusion as to what they're gonna vote it, and then it goes back to city council for a vote.
Then it's over at that point,
Right.
once it goes back after
Okay.
the hearing.
Well, then we move this ahead with your changes
Okay.
to move it along.
Okay,
Seconded.
No.
great,
Well, we're all in favor of it.
Yes, all in favor?
okay.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting that part. Okay, does anyone have anything else they'd like to bring up at this meeting?
No?
Meeting adjourned,
Okay,
7:33.
very good. Good to be back.
Yes, thank you for coming, Fran.
Oh, you're quite
Thank you.